2.
We are live at a special start time because we have a very special guest. We have on the podcast for the very first time, very happy for this first, we have with us the writer of the Power Fantasy, Mr. Kieron Gillen. Kieron, how are you doing?
I'm feeling very happy to have that very lovely intro. Thank you. You're very kind.
Oh, absolutely. And, I want to put this out up front. The Power Fantasy is a must-read book. I feel very comfortable saying that. I have no issues with that. We're 5 issues deep, so there's absolutely no reason not to get this book. And I want to make this announcement up front. We are going to give away a copy of the trade, which just dropped this month in January. Tyler's not here, so we don't have the ability to do the wheel. Oh, Kieron is holding it up. Oh, that looks great.
Ooh.
This is the direct market cover, but there's two covers. There's the standard cover, and there's also one specifically for the direct market, which is this one. But yeah.
That's great. We're going to put that in somebody's hands. We're going to put that in somebody's hands, and we're going to talk next week about the process of that. But I want to put our money where our mouths are. We're telling you this book is worth your time. So if you haven't read it, we want to be able to put it in your hands. That's how we do things around here. So we're going to get that done here next week. Kieron, I want to talk about why the Power Fantasy. You've talked about it, in other interviews and stuff, but I want to give our listeners kind of an establishing idea of why you wanted to do this book right now.
It's interesting because the weird thing, of course, being like one arc in, you learn. I mean, the point of doing an ongoing is you start the project, you have strong ideas, and then you start digging in and you discover more and more. And you start questioning your subconscious, not in a bad way, in a kind of, because the point of writing is discovery. Because if I knew everything at the start, I would tweet it. Actually, I wouldn't tweet it anymore. But I would have just, you know what I mean? But the core thing was, there's an idea here, and it excited me. And it came from Immortal X-Men in the same way Wicked Divine came from Young Avengers. As in, this is stuff which I like, but I could never do at Marvel. But so, I mean, the core idea was, I think it was probably someone like Storm versus Exodus. And there's like, these people can rebuild planets. These people could never fight. If we took that seriously, instead of doing it in the romantic mode, the world would end. And then it was like, okay, well, why not? That's an interesting idea. Especially because it seemed to so much about what I was interested in Immortal X-Men was not the fighting. It was so hard to right. You sort of see me squeeze a fight scene in that kind of like, okay, I'm a Marvel comic, I better. But I didn't really want to. Not actually, I'm lying, I do. I actually love fight scenes. But it wasn't what the book was about. And so that was the core thing, as in, okay, let's just run with it. 6 people and the end of the world. And that everything built from there. Because, if you haven't read like Judgment Day, my Marvel crossover, it's about the end of the world. It's specifically about the fear that we have no future, the fear that us as a species together are doomed. So there's that in there. My fear for the world. Also, I'm about to hit 50, petrifying. And there's a bit of me kind of like the Power Fantasy is looking back at the 20th century and what one can learn from it, both on a personal level and what my parents would have gone through, but also what was the 20th century about. Then it also becomes about power, an individual. I mean, this is weird because I sort of talk about it not as a superhero book, but in some ways it's the most superhero book on the market. It's about, I mean, what was Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility. And this is that. It's taken it absolutely seriously. And the problem being is the second if you've got enough power, what is responsibility?
Right.
And that's what the book circles. Especially this early, you've seen lots of different angles. You're still meeting the cast. But that's what I'm interested in exploring. Ethics, morals, the philosophy of what we do. And of course, we're not like superpowered beings. But but at the same time, I've always been interested in the genre as a device to examine ourselves. In terms of, okay, what should we do? What should we do better? What is power? And especially I look at the oligarchy growing in America. And I've said this before, it's like in the first issue, there's a bit where Etienne basically says we shouldn't exist. People like us shouldn't exist. And it's kind of saying no one should be that powerful. And that applies to every single billionaire as much as, you know what I mean? This is kind of what all that stuff's in the book. Because this is one of the thing about writing is it's never just one thing, it's everything. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why I wanted to do it then was there's the commercial reason in that kind of oh no, coming off Immortal X-Men, it's a good idea to do something that builds. There's a story there. But also it's the thing that was it felt most 2024 in terms of that weird sense of Armageddon to it. Like, and the idea of like what we can possibly learn from the past. Do we have a future? Like, and that's the fear. Like, the doom scrolling of the world. Like, and there's a really great podcast. I'm really going off on it here. There's a great podcast I call End of Civilizations, and it's a series of it's a historical podcast, and what's it specifically about is the way civilizations ended. Like, so it goes, and every single time I listen to it, I always go, "Oh, I would love to do a story set in this period." Um, and what it does is the individual apocalypses, how awful it is for them, but also what happened next. The idea that the end isn't really the end. I mean, I often think about like do you know about the Bronze Age collapse? Basically, there's this bit in like about 1000 BC, or when all the Mediterranean civilization disappeared. Someone called the Sea Peoples turned up. Everything just crashed. It was basically like Walking Dead, but with but in the Bronze Age. And if you were alive then, you would have probably thought that was it. All these enormous civilizations come crashing down. There's nothing. There's people really reduced, and of course, it's not the end really, because it rebuilds in a different way. It's in other words, despite being an incredibly depressing podcast, it's also a very life affirming podcast in terms of like, yeah, like not that life will survive because I think that's very naive in some ways, but at the same time, humans are powerful and resilient, and we can make decisions. So like, all that stuff, and like what I've just done is a download, and that's just as I said, if the Power Fantasy is a cake, I've given a slice and I haven't gone all the way through. So that's kind of why I did it. Basically, my brain was on fire and we had to share it. And Casper enabled me.
And that's one of the things I love about your work in general is the fact that you are always clearly as a human being, you're constantly thinking, constantly analyzing, and you are, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're affected by the way of the world and you're thoughtful about it. And as a creator, your outlet is to sit and write and put comics out that deal with things that not everybody is comfortable talking about. Not everybody wants that to be the basis of the stories that they put out there, but you do. And for people like myself and a lot of our audience members who love what you do, there aren't a lot of places to get that. So that's why this book was so exciting to me. And that's why it was so exciting when you jumped on the X-Men train with Immortal. And it was like, okay, now I know that we're going to get something really different because it's Kieron Gillen who's jumping into the fray. So you have created and crafted an kind of an implicit understanding with the people who like what you do that like this is what you're going to get. And in every single way that's positive, the power fantasy is emblematic of who Kieron Gillen is as a creator, at least in my mind.
You're incredibly kind, Sean. I'm just going to wander off now. Like I'm an English guy and blushing. Honestly, that as a writer, as a creative, you're kind of like putting yourself out there and hoping people get it. And I'm aware of my flaws and my strengths. I'm aware of some of my flaws and strengths anyway. But I'm also aware that I hope people go that I don't really half-arse it. Like I don't really have any gear, but too much. So like, you know what I mean? I'm
Pedal
part
to the
of
metal.
my brain goes, if I was less too much, I'd probably have more readers, but they'd probably care less. And I think people come to me and they know. And with the Power Fantasy, this is one of the things I was trying to do was square the two parts of me. The part of me that absolutely disappears into the void, and the other part of me goes, I want to reach as many people as possible. As in, I want in that kind of like, because I think that's kind of what the comics needs. They need it. The idea of here's a monthly book that will treat you intelligently, but also be fun. Like every issue, my God, they did that. I mean, I just got a note from the editor's just read issue 8 script, and she kind of hit the last page and her notes on it. Basically, some of the strongest swear words the strongest swear word you can imagine was in one of the notes. And that's what I kind of hoped. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, because this was one of my favorite bands as well when I grew up, and all the artists, I kind of like stuff which is both absolutely pop but also really smart. It's like bands like the Manic Street Preachers or like Public Enemy. This kind of the idea. You can dance to it, but there's a lot going on. And that's kind of what I've always wanted to do. And like the people I work with, like I joke that Casper enables me, but that's kind of what I look for as well. The idea of someone who else is similarly up to trouble. It's like when I work with Jamie or Stephanie. They're the people who excite me in that way. So yeah, I'm. You just kind of hope that you're doing something that's actually worthwhile. And it's like I see people thinking about the Power Fantasy. It's good because it's meant to be thought about. It's like what I try not to do is dialectic work. That's a word I can never pronounce. Yes, that's a position. And normally my stories take 40 issues to get round to what I think is the point because I'm trying to create a synthesis. But at the same time, it's like I'm not trying to create a right and wrong world here. I'm trying to present these people who are very there's an underlying aesthetic to it, and there's certainly an underlying philosophy beneath it which emerges. But the idea of no, I'm going to write all these people as serious as I can, and make the pitch. Like I think that's one of the things at Marvel. I got given villain books quite often, just because I kind of take villains seriously. I said, okay, how on earth would someone self-justify this bullshit? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the thing. It's like I remember writing Woden for Wake Dip, and he was an awful, awful person. But like, what would I do? You know, if I was that sort of misogynist, how would I try to justify it to myself? You know, and like, it's no fun. You know what I mean? You write someone who's that bad, it's no fun. And with the Power Fantasy, I went a different way. I don't think there's an openly bad character of the main six. You know, when you get to know them, you'll go, oh, okay, they're an arsehole, but I can see maybe why they got there. And, you know, but of course, everyone's response differs. Because that's the other fun thing about the book is, I get some people saying, oh, this character's the villain. And I go, that's interesting. Why'd you say that? You know what I mean? Like, it's all, you know, there's a line by Wilde that all criticism is autobiography. And what he means is like, what anyone says about work, they're really talking about their own life. And they're talking about how that's absolutely what art is, you know, because I said earlier, like, you would I post on Blue Sky if it was simple. Art is meant to be complicated and rich and chewed over. You know what I mean? Anyway, but thank you. I'm glad that you respond to the work in that way, Sean. Thank you.
I like that you say that, you know, the art meets the individual where they're at, and to that degree, you know, I agree that I don't feel like there is a centralized villain, but I think there's the concepts of there's scales of good and evil, and I think those become interesting because, you know, Etienne harps on about his ethics and his morals, but how do you stand by that with the actions that take place? And to your point, right, it's about listing out those actions. When Heavy doesn't lift a finger to kill anybody, who's in the wrong there?
Yeah, and who would have done it? And like it cascades down. And
Yeah.
actually, one of my favorite bits of Heavy is like people when he apologizes in issue 2 or 3, I think, 4, 2. I mean, no, not 3 because that's the Valentina issue. But you know, when he apologizes to Tonya, as I shouldn't have done it. You know, like I didn't take him seriously, and that for me, that's actually one of my favorite small bits because I think it surprised me he apologized because when you're writing, you're discovering the characters, and it's that kind of like, no, he's not like this cardboard cutout of a dude. You know, it's that kind of like, you know, he made a call. He thought it wasn't nothing was going to happen, and it did happen. You know, and it's like, and now he feels pretty bad about it. But at the same time, he can't really cry over the people he got murdered because he's yada yada yada. But I think it's like Etienne's a fascinating. That's why one of the reasons we came in with Etienne as a character. He would almost say, like I think he would almost certainly say, and I can't believe he said it. That he hasn't said it already. The idea of having this much power is fundamentally immoral. By definition, all my actions are unethical. Or no, all my actions already immoral. Is a question about how can I be more ethical. You know, and it's all these things like and also with Etienne, maybe he's just full of shit. You know what I mean? Like, how much do you believe? You know, these are the things. Is it just himself justifying? I mean, what? And then it comes to the question of, well, if he's not completely full of shit, he would have probably done worse things, or would he? Because you know, the other thing you've got to remember is Valentina sees him. You know, Valentina knows anytime he's doing anything really something bad. You know, all this stuff ties together. So, how responsible is Valentina for not stopping him?
Yeah.
You know,
or even like to the degree. Sorry, Sean. Or I'm just fascinated on this part. Like, or even to the degree that Valentina, being, you know, this angel, is oversight, but it's oversight insofar as he has stated, well, you could stop, right? And so I will only go up to the bounds to which it's probably permissible for you. So I guess you could assume there the bounds are technically endless. It's just that you know, there's a higher power sort of keeping him accountable.
Yeah, it's sort of like there's I just found myself thinking anyone who doesn't know the book when listening to this is going to go, what on earth are they talking about?
Well,
but like, it's that kind of. But I meant to say the first thing like Etienne does in the issue 1 is ask Valentina, can he do it? You know, that's the first thing he does.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so telling. Anyway.
You put out a really cool website where people can kind of get a primer on what the power fantasy is. I was able to check it out this morning and it was awesome. I just sent that out in the chat. So if anybody is curious about sort of the finer details of what we're talking about, definitely go here. There's a link where you can purchase the Power Fantasy as well. So click that link and you'll get all the information. You can also just listen to us chat about it. But that is a great way to pick up the book. And there's a really cool trailer too. I am fascinated by the fact that this, like you said, this book doesn't really have traditional heroes and villains. Um, Everybody is sort of questionable because their nature is questionable. And
Yeah.
so I don't even read this book in the binary of who's good and who's bad. It's almost like the scale of that is too small for how powerful these people are. Etienne's decisions, right? Um, issue 4 is my favorite issue.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's incredible because in this issue, he makes a decision to alter someone's brain pattern to change the words that were going to come out of their mouth, essentially to save the world from a person who really just wants to be an artist and wants to be respected, but also happens to be somebody capable of ending the entire world. And so, what are the ethics of having the ability to change someone's mind about something when the alternative to that kind of intrusion is the literal end of humanity, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a big deal.
Or the problem is like, so the counter argument is, or is it like maybe she could take it, but unlike Etienne's, it's like I'm not going to roll. Etienne's, I'm not going to roll the dice on that.
Right.
Even
Right.
if it's a 1 in 100 chance, why would I roll the dice on that? Like, I would if you chose my daughter dying and me rolling a 100-sided dice and turning up a 1. I'm not going to roll that dice, like unless unless there was a bigger chance. That's what an operation is. Anyway, but you know what I mean. And one of my favorite things about 4 is, because you say it's like these people aren't necessarily all good and bad. They're talking about power on such a level where but people, power is corrupting or power revealing is an interesting way. I think one of the things that issue 4 especially shows is power distorts. Like the problem with Masumi is she doesn't need to do anything. Her power is so great she passively distorts the world around her. You know what I mean? That's what power. Power is like a black hole. This kind of she could be the best person in the world, and it doesn't matter because people aren't going to treat her like that anyway. And that's the horror, the real horror of issue 4. I mean, talk about Etienne on one side, but it's all so it's all so incredibly sad. I think.
Curse.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And it's like, I thought, what would it be like to be Masumi's girlfriend? What would it be like to have that be my partner? And, I can't fully be honest because just us having a bad night could result in everything ending. That's a lot of pressure. And I like that Etienne is kind of that, he's the adjuster to come to that pressure valve and twist it and turn it to keep things copacetic. But what is that doing to him? What does that say about him? There's just so many fascinating questions that every issue is asking.
There's 2 really small details in that issue, right? Like that issue and the second issue, they tie together. Like the one in that issue is the first thing he's done it multiple times, which is whatever. But the thing he says before doing it is, if you want out, I'll try to help you out. I'll work out. I'll try to together work out a way to get out of this minefield. And she goes, no, then yes, but is there something you can do to help? So that all plays out. The question is, what would he have done if she said no? Do we believe Etienne when he says that? And that's, that's genuinely a good question. And the one earlier on in issue 2 is when she's talking to Masumi about he can't control Masumi's personality. That's actually the big problem because he clearly would if he could. But he says, but he can control himself. So the thing about Etienne, he's emotionally not castrated, but got himself in a straitjacket emotionally. He's controlling himself to stay calm. So what would he be like if he wasn't controlling himself? You know what I mean? Because so he's Mr. Spock himself in some ways. It's not quite true. There's emotions with him, but he's very much like, I'm going to have to stay calm. I can't get angry. I can't let the emotions get into it. I've got to try it, and that's the only way I can get through this. And how does that leave you? You know what I mean? I feel enormously sorry for all the cast. They're all very sad, in different ways.
But all of this is the interesting part of the power fantasy. Those are the individual powers or the dynamics between each of these characters, and that's what's so interesting about the book is there was a moment where it's just like, oh, the dominoes fall. In the first issue where Heavy comes in, he just starts to check in on people. Hey, this is happening. Hey, this happens, because there is a waterfall to these things, because he's expecting reactions based off of true action.
There's a line, like, I haven't written it yet. Or I think it might be in the next issue 9. But basically, Etienne would end up talking about the weird horror of him, as in when stuff goes down, it's too late for him. He has to do everything because he can't he's not like Heavy who can he has to if stuff goes as like the second summer of love, this thing we're only going to reveal in 989. When the world starts actually ending, he can't do anything. He can only do stuff in advance.
Wow.
And that's a weird. He might be able to keep people calm. He might, he'll probably save people's lives a bit. He makes sure they're not in pain when they die. That kind of thing he can do. But like, if it's too late, it's too late for him. He's not like we described Magus and Eliza helping save the world in 989, though you don't know how yet. They can do that. They could when the brink is reached, they can do something. He can't. That's another thing to view him through. Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. That's the thing is, there's 6 really interesting, messy characters, and for me, it's like you want to. It's the game between them. The game's a strong word, but the push and pull. It's a political book, both in the capital P politics in the big sense, but it's in the personal sense because it's a book about these push and pull between these 6 very strong characters, and how on earth they're not going to kill everybody.
We got a super chat from Hecatron 499 who says, "No question for Kieron. Just wanted to say the book is phenomenal and fresh take on the real life superheroes would be terrifying type of story."
Yeah, it's weird because it's like I agree. Hey, thank you. But like the way it's definitely not a superhero book, but at the same time, it's also a book that's entirely informed by the genre of the super powered individual. It's a superhero. You know what I mean? It's all that stuff's tied in, and it's like there's one thing I don't think it is. Like pick like. We talk about the deconstructionary superhero, and this is what they'd be like. And I don't think they wouldn't be like anything because this is all a philosophical game. But that original deconstructionary superhero wave in the 80s, your Watchmen's and stuff, they were the dissection of the thing. They were basically meant as a response to the pre-existing fall, and they've been around for 40 years though. Like some people's first superhero books were those books. So if your first superhero book is Watchmen or Dark Knight, it's not a deconstruction. It's just how it is.
Yep.
And that, you know what I mean? Like, and that is the space I'm in. I don't feel I'm picking a fight with, what I mean? I'm not saying real superheroes be like this. I'm saying this is a different way of looking at this genre, and I think it's a fun one. I found this, and I'm saying this, and I don't mean it in a bad way. Sometimes you get some superhero fans are quite defensive over. I only really want these good superheroes. The idea of superheroes being something else other than that is in some way an insult to these, and I'm like, I don't think that's true. It's like when noir detectives arrived, it was an insult to like Sherlock Holmes. You know what I mean? Sherlock Holmes and and Agatha Christie is one way of doing a crime story, and noir stories, your Sam Spade or whatever, is another way. They're not like picking a fight. You can love them both. They're just different ways of using that genre to play with things. So that's kind of where I am in that kind of like we're 40 years on. We can use this wide palette. I tell you, that's the other thing I like about the power fantasy. It's fun. You know what I mean? It's not somber. It's a big question, but it's and it's really tense. But there's funny stuff. And it's playful. And Casper's cartooning helps a lot. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Well, when you were doing Immortal X-Men, which I just thought was brilliant.
Thank you.
That was a book where it's like, okay, you're taking these characters who have massive powers, and on the Quiet Council, not everybody was what we would consider to be a hero. There were some pretty bad hombres on that
terrible
team.
People.
Right. Absolutely dreadful people. But forcing the characters to kind of shift away from that idea and work together to resolve the problems of Krakoa and to advance the society. I mean, ultimately, we saw how that went terribly. But it was interesting to observe that unfold, and you're doing it with IP characters that have stakeholders involved, and you have to include a fight scene every so often to keep people engaged. And here it just feels like, I don't have to do any of that. I can do what is best for the story. I can do what is best for the moment. And I loved getting to see creators, like you talked about Al earlier. Al Ewing, we only find them when they're dead. That felt like Al Ewing completely unhinged and unleashed in the absolute best way. That's why I love when you creators who really have something to say shift away from the big two for a little bit. I love getting to see you guys do the big books, but when you shift away for a little bit and you get to do whatever the fuck you want, that's the moment. That's the art. Like it's all art, but like that's where it's like, okay, now we can really cook and get down deep.
I call it like, it always sounds weird. I always call it the real work. You know what I mean? I don't mean that it's like, the X-Men would come out whether if I died or not, but this only exists because of me and Casper. This is all, and then like, if I had to destroy all my work, I would be very sad. But the stuff I would keep, the books I would destroy last would be the stuff I made. In the same way, it's one of the lines I always use about Kirby. What would Jack Kirby do? What would Kirby do? And of course, make something new up. And that's the kind of like, this is where the holy stuff is that. And the great joy of comics, you don't have to choose. So you do get to go, oh, I'm going to go write X-Men for a bit. It'll be a giggle. Or me writing Warhammer.
The easy work.
You don't have to choose the real joy.
The easy work, as you say in one of your essays, is going to do these superhero comics.
For me, sorry, I was laughing to, oh my God, my name's gone blank. The DC writer, Nailbiter, original, his Image comic.
Joshua Williamson?
Joshua, thank you. I'm sorry, Josh. I think he was listening to an interview, him talk about how the creator owned is easy work. And like the DC stuff is hard or whatever. And I'm like, and he was talking about it specifically. It's like, it's the amount of organization you've got to do and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And with writing, it's just writing. And for me, it's like, well, yeah, it's true, but like, not for me. Like the amount of because I think he has a much healthier response to work, whilst I'm a complete control freak. Like, and I mentioned you mentioned Sean, the preview thing I've done in terms of like sharing and explaining the book. It's that kind of, oh no, I could do an entire marketing thing with all these other stuff we brought together, or like, except the extra of it, because it's like, I came into comics via Watchmen was a book that kind of got me into comics full on. At least I'm not sure I'm lying. I got into comics like a few trades a year, and I came in hard with like the Alice books. And the idea, which obviously is annoying and sad,
totally.
But I've got lost track. But the point being, it's stuff like the Invisibles. Like, obviously I love JLA with Grant, but like the Invisibles or Kill Your Boyfriend or whatever, well, they're the stuff that really gets to me. And it's always like that. That's the stuff I'm kind of like came in to do. In fact, it's almost the flip is I'm generally surprised that I kind of did as much superhero work as I have, because it's like I loved it, but it's not how I saw myself, and I don't think it's how my peers, my friends on web forums when I'm hanging out with them, that's not how they probably saw me going. but I still like what I like about comics. You kind of get the ability to warp it to yourself a bit, like Mortal X-Men, as you said, Sean. It's how I would do that book. It was the genius of like John putting everything on Krakoa, putting all these people in the same room and forcing them to talk. That's amazing. It's really simple, and obviously they will never be in the same room. Some people might say, and it's like, well, yeah, but accept that they can. Let's go with it, because it leads to really interesting stories. That's the thing about like superhero comics. I've always liked in terms of you kind of want to see people do the spin. It's not like you want to see Grant Morrison do like Dark Knight Returns. You want to see Grant Morrison do Grant Morrison. In fact, that whole point of Dark Knight Returns is actually Miller doing it in his way. You kind of, with these kind of folk songs, you play it your own way. That I find really appealing. But it's a different beast and easier. I did a whole Dostoevsky riff twice in X-Men, and like, why would I do that? Because I could. And it amused me, and I thought, like, if it it may set someone else's brain on fire. Because one of the things, if you like it, you've got to assume you're not that weird. You know what I mean? As a like, you're doing it and you think, I like this. This made Casper laugh. Maybe someone else will go for it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't answer the question. My actual answer, though, I've remembered what I was going to say right at the beginning, is the really big thing about doing your own book from scratch like this. It frees you entirely, because you don't get people coming into it with false expectations. You get a fan base who loves it for what it is. Right. Let's use Young Avengers as an example. There were some Young Avengers fans don't like what we do, which is fair enough. But that's because they were fans of the original run, and we came and did our own thing. And when people went to Wickdiv, that all disappeared, because people came to Wickdiv and they either didn't like it, then left, or they just stayed because they stayed and liked the thing we were doing. And that's the exciting thing, because you end up building up a community of people who are attracted to what the book is. I mean, I'm sort of seeing people writing their essays about different characters now on Tumblr. You know what I mean? And that's that kind of what I'm kind of interested in people who think too much. You know. Anyway.
Hell yeah.
One thing that you mentioned Wikdiv, I want to bring up some of the stuff you've done with like Phonogram. I'm curious, and it appears here too in the Power Fantasy to some degree. I've always been curious why the value of music is so impactful in your books, being that it's one of the few, I guess, art forms that can't be as well represented in comics. You can have film, obviously you can have movement, you can have static imagery, you have art here with something like Masumi, but I'm curious, even Valentina receives a record, it impacts her. What is that value for you with music specifically?
I mean, obviously it's personal brain damage and I'm obsessed, but like the actual me and Jamie were talking about this in Phonogram really at the early days.
Yeah,
that comics and music are opposite art forms. They're literally two art forms whose overlap, they've got tiny bits of overlap, but like their core of what the art form does are entirely there's no Venn diagram, because in comics you have control over visuals and you control over space. And in comics and in music you have control over time, you have control over sound. That's what music lets you control over. You don't have control over time in comics. You can sort of bully people to try to read slower, but you don't have the perfect control that music is. And, you know, I mean, they're just literally opposite art forms. Therefore, any attempt to do any version of it in it is just doomed. And that's kind of the fun of it. Like, you're trying to create something impossible, so by definition, you'll create something novel. You know what I mean? It forces you to be, create something by default. You've got no chance of doing it, like, in a simple way. So you're going to create something of itself.
Like some kind of abstraction.
That's part of it. For Power Fantasy, it's much more like, it's a cultural history aspect. I mean, like I found like it's easy to do a political book about alternate, like an alternate timeline, and you lean in the kind of the big socio-political stuff. But I'm like, I kind of like the warmth and the wet for it in terms of like that's the thing I can't say, but the details of what it would be like to be there. I mean, there's a really great podcast called Andrew Hickey's History of Rock Music in 500 Songs, which is basically a cultural history of music, and it's like rock music in the broadest terms, and it means it's like it's covering everything, and he's only up to like 69, 70 or whatever, and he goes back to beginning of the 20th century. But one of the things he often does is put stuff in context, and it's been really interesting as part of the actual research for this. It's like I mean, I touched on this in issue 3, but number 1 during the Cuban Missile Crisis was Telstar, the record we ended up doing a sequence in the issue, but also the Monday, which was just before the start of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Beatles' first record was released in the UK, and also the Beach Boys' first single in the UK was released on the same day. So I found myself imagining that music nerd, the Lloyd from Phonogram, picking up these 2 records, walking around, obsessing over them whilst the world's about to end. You know what I mean? Like, because we think about the big events, and it's like any time we live through big events, we remember, like, where were you when 9/11 happened? That kind of question, and it's that, because it's always much more human than the alternate. You know what I mean? Like, it's much, you see stuff in real small details, and that's what I think music gives me in Power Fantasy. In terms of like it gives a kind of a sense of the small stuff. I mean, one of my favorite things about Etienne is like the coffee. Etienne's obsession with, Etienne was always carrying a coffee for the whole thing. These kind of like the human details that keep it from getting too big. I mean, it's what I used to love about the Marvel Universe. Always did. I used to define the Marvel Universe as if you can't imagine these characters eating a pizza, it's probably not the core Marvel Universe. And so that's why I started the Power Fantasy with 2 characters eating pizza on a corner in New York. There's that kind of like, okay, I want to make an aesthetic statement. Yeah, you know what I mean? So in some ways, music is like pizza in the Power Fantasy. Well, but also it's an energy. I mean, sorry, and also some of it's just in jokes. Like the Second Summer of Love was a real thing in the UK in 1989. Like, it was basically the E-rave scene, like in Manchester. Okay. 24-hour Party People is a movie kind of about it. So it's like, it's a weird joke that pretty much me and Al Ewing will probably get, but also it's not. It's a different way of thinking about stuff, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's great because I just checked to see what it would be, what the that single is, right? Love Me Do. So huge song,
yes.
Terribly popular, and that as a contrast to your point, the next day Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So like where are people at, and where are the powers that be? And in this case, in power fantasy, where are the powers that be? What are they doing? What are their machinations? And how are they interacting with just ordinary people who are at risk based on their actions?
The power of fantasy is like, it's just the warping of it. Like, these people have such a level of power, their existence will warp everything about it. So it's like, what happens if I was I'm a fan of a random 90s band called Kaneki. Let's choose Kaneki. Like, if I was as powerful as any of these people, pretty sure Kaneki would reform. You know? And I wouldn't even ask that. There would be the records be released. There'd be all this just because my weird taste means this, and all the characters are a bit like that. The passive effects of their obsessions are going to warp things, unless they don't. I mean, someone like Etienne, it's noticeable that he keeps himself really tight. It's not, he's got no visible. So he's people compare. Obviously, Xavier's a good comparison, but he's not like Xavier. He's got no friends. He's got no school. He's deliberately positioned himself by himself. Why? We haven't really explored that yet. You might argue he thinks it's ethical. It's not ethical for me to have like too much social life, and that's sad. That's really tough. Anyway, I'm bouncing around again.
Love it.
We love the energy. So Mike Hank dropped a 199 super chat on us, and he said, I appreciate how the power fantasy feels like real life relationship between family and dealing with other people's buttons and working around them. That's an interesting interpretation. I like that.
No, I agree. Like, it's the human stuff really matters, because it's like, you can get lost in the coldness, but there's 6 people who've known it. This is what I liked about the alternate history. They've known each other for a long time, most of them. Like, even Masumi is like 17 years. Eliza is around, but Eliza becomes Hellbound in 89, so she's been around for 10 years. But at least half the cast knew Eliza at that before then. Actually, I'm blind. They would have only Majors would have. So I'm disappearing down a hole here. Yes, exactly. These people have to find a way to live together, or the 2 ways I define the book is, one is like Watchmen if there were 6 Dr. Manhattans, and the other way I would normally follow up with, because that makes it feel a bit cold. And it's like, imagine if you and your 5 messy mates had to stay civil about who was clean. Okay, who's going to clean the fridge in this house share?
Oh, not me.
And if we don't find a reason, who's going to clean the fridge? The entire world's going to explode. You know what I mean? That's kind of the plot as well. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I just find that it's graphic. There's so much stuff we have. Like I said, it's Katie, our editor, was like, it's been really good so far, but it gets better and bigger and more and oh my god, they're doing this now, because once you've got the pieces, you start seeing the tension, because almost every issue you realize, oh my god, it's even worse than I thought. And at some point, it just, like, I joke about the bear being a big influence, and it is. Like how the bear runs off tension. Like, that's kind of what I'm trying to do here.
Man, the moment in issue 5 when we see how badly that whole second Summer of Love stuff went, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, I didn't expect this shit. What happened? I thought it was about love.
It's like, it was going really well until it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's like...
We also got a $4.99 super chat from Matt Fisher. Thank you, Matt. He says, hi, Mr. Gillen. It's an honor to meet you. Love your work. Keep up the awesome interviews. Until Space Ghost meets Superman on Eltar, make mine the Comics Pals.
Hey.
Go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, no, you go. I was gonna pivot.
You talked about this really cool sort of preview kind of primer page that you set up, and it made me think about marketing in comics. One of the things that is patently obvious to me since I started reading over the last 20 years is that creators are largely their own marketers, and it feels that way even if you are in the big 2. Like, the amount of creators I see who, whether they're coming on shows like ours or they're on X and Blue Sky and whatever, really like Scott Snyder put on a campaign for the Absolute Universe like nobody else that I've ever seen, other than like Kirkman. And so you guys and girls have to be your own marketers and everything else. Is that, as much as you feel comfortable with, is there an aspect of that that's frustrating for you, that you can't just sort of do the work?
I'm really lazy is the thing. So, like, yes, obviously. But like as I said earlier, I'm also a control freak. So it's something like I come from a music background and fanzine background, and I if you go back to my earliest days in comics, I was standing outside Comic Cons in London handing out flyers for Phonogram, and I stood there all day at Comic Con doing it. That kind of thing. That's always been me. Like I kind of when I was in bands, I was always the person who designed the posters because someone has to, and it's going to be and it is going to be me. It's always going to be me. I was always the classic person who booked the sessions for the bands to play.
Okay.
As in we're gonna, someone has to, and it's and if they don't do it, it literally won't happen.
Yeah.
Because I've got that kind of energy.
What was your instrument?
I was bass. I was terrible. I played, I played literally. I wanted to be in bands, and I could do everything else but play. But actually, since Iris came, I've started playing music again, casually writing little songs and stuff, which is fun. They're terrible, but that's the point. It's like artist expression is good for you.
Yeah.
So on one level, yes, it would obviously give me a lot more time back, and obviously you can. But part of me, because there's an upside to it too, and actually, let's finish the downside before we hit the upside. The downside, of course, at the moment, it's just really hard. Like the collapse of social media increasingly close infrastructures. That even I'm not on X anymore, but if I was, X punishes external links. So the idea that Facebook does as well. All these kind of abilities to reach people are really not. It's much harder now. Than it was even when Circa Wictive. So you've got to do as much work, and you're not sure if any of it's working. And that was always the thing. You try everything you can, because if you don't try something and you didn't do it, you've got a what if in your head, but you really never know. So yeah, it's upsetting and frustrating, and a lot of work. Ideally you shouldn't do. On the other hand, you get to sort of curate an experience. Is the way of saying it. For me, books. This is a band thing as well. A band isn't just the records. When they're a living band, it's like the cover art. It's how they present themselves in public. It's how they play. It's where they play. It's how they deal with the press. It's how they do interviews. This all is kind of like a coherent experience. Like I mentioned Public Enemy earlier. If you go back and think about Public Enemy circa then, it's that Manic circa that. So the whole thing is things you can lose yourself in. And when I was a games journalist, I used to do a kind of marketing for games people speech, and it was one of the points was make it fun for yourself. If you don't want to do it, you'll be bad at it. That's the thing. It's okay. What would excite me, and why could I do it? So and some people just aren't wired like this. That's hard because it makes their job much harder. For me, it's the reason I've done this preview is this excites me. This is a fun thing. I would like this. And also it's something. Things not being right bugs me. The reason I did this preview is Bindings. The site it's on is called Bindings, which is like a marketing site, and I was like, okay, I reckon I'm gonna do a good version of this. And it's a bunch of pages from the comic. It's got design. It tells the story. You can read through it. It introduces a lot of stuff. Click the link, people. We put time in on it, but it's also a link tree. That's kind of what you can just press a button. It links to everywhere you can buy it. All your creators. There's a trailer. And one of the things they're working on, I don't know if they'll get this working. Last time I heard they actually are working on it for this year, is the integration with your local comic shop for the site. So you'll be able to press a button and pre-order.
Wow.
And that would be a game changer. You know what I mean? And that is beyond my control. But that's an example of, but this is a stepping stone as in, okay, what do we need? This is the thing we need. And I've done it as best as I can. And I like helping people as well. I'm doing interviews in the back of Power Fantasy. I quite like the community. This turns the other. So yes, it's about marketing. It's marketing other people's books, but it's also marketing the idea of a comics infrastructure. The idea that we're in this together. Because you're right, we're not Marvel or DC, which does have some support. All we have is basically our own books. And if we all stand alone, it's kind of A, it's lonely, but B, it just makes the work harder. I always remember Saga hitting like Saga did made all of the books sell better. Or the launches got bigger, which led to, success begat success. So this part of the thing with Power Fantasy was, okay, I'm going to launch this book, it's going to do what it does, but I want to help other books. And I'm saying that, it makes it sound like I'm trying to be a saint, but it's not. It's more like, no, this is self-interest. We all have to do this because it's what it's about. It's this solidarity thing in the really small level. But you know what I mean? We are in this together. And it's got... And excitement begets excitement, and that's part of the marketing. You've seen the teasers we do, because obviously we're trying to make people buy our books, but also funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's audacious. And part of me wishes I was 20 years younger because I would be much more confrontational. Like, you know what I mean? But I'm of a certain age now where I have more decorum. Slightly.
Yeah, a little bit more. We've got questions rolling in. I mean, I got to tell you that people are so excited for you to be here, and it's cool to see everybody's excitement with you being here. Lucas Hallner wants to pivot just a little bit and says, Kieron, I'd love to hear the thought process on your take on Darth Vader. You had a very incredible stay in the Star Wars space.
Thank you.
You did it was Dr. Aphra you did as well, right? Oh my God.
Love that.
That book. Oh, that was my book. Thank you for that book. But
thank you.
Please answer Lucas's question.
Yeah, I just realized I have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to motor and
Yeah.
I'm going to keep myself shorter than I would normally would. Darth Vader, it was great. The great thing about Star Wars, for me, it was like playing the blues. Like, I knew how it went. It's like, normally I didn't mug myself. It was like, it's got to feel Star Wars. So with Darth Vader, I was thinking, okay, it's not going to be an Empire book, because Empire would basically be a fascist book, and that's dull and boring, and I mean that in a kind of multiple ways. It's got to feel Star Warsy, so we end up in a position where we're trying to create a book which is inverted Star Wars. So Vader is in the Luke role, and I build the cast around him. But specifically with Vader, there was two things. One, I was reading, I view it as a historical work almost. Like I looked at the canon, because the canon was smaller then, and it was, okay, it starts here, it ends here. I'm starting after A New Hope, I'm ending at Empire. What's the story here? And there's two stories. One is he discovers he has a kid, and therefore his last 20 years of his life has been a lie. That's never covered. B, at the end of the first movie, he is involved in the biggest military disaster of all time. And literally the Empire, the Emperor's last 20, his plan across 20 years has been, mess up the Republic, build a Death Star, then threaten the universe. That's his plan. And it's all been blown up. And not true, but they're basically the only survivor is bloody Darth Vader. He should be like in bad books. Start the next movie, he's actually much more powerful than he ever was in the first movie. So what the hell happened there? So it's the fall and rise of Darth Vader. So those two stories became my book. And the other thing was like, okay, how to present him. And my core ideas were like, it should be just scary. Like you could see inside, we get stuff like you see inside his head. Like you get these single flash panels of something he's remembering, but you don't get captions. You don't know what he's actually thinking. You're left to be at a distance. I thought of him a bit like the Punisher. Anytime any other character's in a room with them, you should be worried about them. And that's weirdly, of course, what the book ran off. Like Dr. Aphra became, in reality, leads the wrong, but she was the emotional weight of it in some ways. It's the question of like, because you knew Vader was going to survive. You had no idea if she was. Because you saw what everyone else had. Vader walks into a room, someone's going to die. So this is what the book ran off. So that's how the other thing about Vader, you had to surrounded by a cast. Because comics, you can't do comics. There's stuff in film you can do with gestures, and it's really hard to do in comics because it takes a lot of panels, and stuff you could do like it's just much harder. So you need to use speech to do exposition in some degrees in terms of explaining what's going on. And Vader, the more Vader talks, the less he is like Vader.
Yeah.
So we've got to have him with a cast to do the talking. So you got Aphra, you got the droids, So these people around him do all the talking, so he can stand there, hogging the camera and looking awesome. Like it's that kind of thing. You think about, okay, what do I want this character to feel like that? So thank you. I'm glad it worked for you guys.
The chat is going crazy about your Dr. Aphra.
It was so fun. Honestly, it was so good that she landed, because you introduce a character like that to the book, you feel like sacrilege. Because, she's going to hang out with Vader and Luke and Han, and it's like, she's not a real character. She's someone I've made up, So that people responded to her like she did was so incredibly, like, relieving, but also gratifying, especially when, like, Jason started writing her. Then she kind of became real. I've got this theory in work for hire. If you're the only person who's written a character, they're not real. The second they're written by someone else, they've actually entered the Marvel universe, and they're no longer yours.
Let's hit Crushing Crisis, who says, question, hello, absurdly huge fan. Can you discuss the conception of the Power Fantasy data page, not only unfurling the entire history, but also footnoting future issues? That seemed audacious to me.
Yes, thank you. Trolling. Yeah, we basically, I knew at the end of issue 3 we're going to do the big drop of, okay, the world is significantly different, and that kind of you can see the traces before then, but they But let's lay it out. And there was timeline. Okay, two things there. Originally, actually, I wrote it as revealing a lot more about what happened. So like, it's almost like playing it open. This isn't surprises. I'm just going to tell you some more. And then we thought, it feels a bit more like I'm taking meat and curiosity from it. So we thought about doing blacked out, censoring it. And then we thought, no, we did that all the time in Krakoa, and also half the time in Krakoa, we didn't know, we didn't know what was going to be beneath it. And I thought going the other way is the fun idea in terms of like, what I mean? Like you did it. Sometimes you definitely knew. And sometimes it's like, no, let's leave it open. We've got options. You know what I mean? Like it's future proofing, in different ways. You always have, you always keep options flexible.
Sure.
And if you've got a chance to keep something flexible, you can. The danger, of course, is when you choose to say what issue something happens in, like I just chose to do. So it was it's a teaser. So people go, oh my God, this is going to happen then. What the hell? And what the hell does this one sentence mean?
Yeah.
It's partially that, but also it's a bit of just swagger. You know what I mean? It's like, we know what we're doing, guys. Trust us. You know what I mean? That's that kind of, we're not in some, like, I think we're far enough past Lost to not be a problem, but Lost ending like it did probably broke people for a generation in terms of trusting people. Like we don't trust anyone's got a plan. A lot of my work since then, because I write complicated stuff, has been going quite early in my run. I show something that shows I know what I'm doing, or at least I've got a plan. Like early in Wicdiv, we did things like Tara. Like we do this thing, and around issue 12 we pull the rug on Tara, and therefore people know that wait, that was set up in issue 1. Mm-hmm. With Power Fantasy, it's kind of like that, as in, oh no, we know what we're doing. Trust us. We're gonna. So the other thing about that data page is there was a couple more issue numbers I wanted to put in, and I decided not to because I wasn't 100% sure if it was going to be issue 15 or 16. Stuff like that. So like I only put stuff in when I knew I was going to do it for sure. But yeah, it's like I think it's mainly swagger, and it makes people when you read it and you had that response is why we did it.
Perfect.
And also that we could, I wouldn't. I'm aware that if I had to not do one, I would. If I, what I mean, like something could happen. You know what I mean? So I would always choose what made the story better, and I would accept. Oh no, I just got it wrong. But it hasn't so far. So I'm happy.
That's an awesome answer. Let's get one more question in before we let you go. This comes from Mike Elliott. He submitted this through the Discord. You guys should join it. We're always having a great time over there. He says, Kieron, I'm a huge fan and very curious about the scripting process, specifically the difference between working with someone like Dan Mora on Once and Future and Stephanie Hans on Die. I appreciate all the back matter you include in your indie books.
Thank you. It's like interesting, mentioning back matter. My own podcast, Decompressed, we're bringing it back for the Power Fantasy. We're doing a series of it's basically me interviewing creators. I've never interviewed anyone about my own books. I'm changing that up because of self-interest. I'm changing that up because I think it'll be interesting. And also there's less back matter in the trade, or as in very, very little. So basically a 5-week series where we interview each member of the cast starting next Wednesday if I edit it in time. So that's, I mentioned that solely as a craft thing. When I teach comics, I've got a comics masterclass I occasionally do. I should do something with that. I haven't done it in a while. One of the bits I go through is talking about scripting for different artists. And there's 2 ways of scripting I describe. There's 2 parts of a script. One is script as architectural blueprint. One is script as love letter. The architectural blueprint thing is basically the equivalent of giving the raw details of what everyone needs to know. They're kind of the absolute minimum, the structure. This is what you need to do to execute it. And the love letter side is whatever they need. The stuff that's specifically written for someone else to make them sing, to woo them, to make them do their best possible work. And I use all my artists I work with, apart from, actually, I haven't done it since I've started working with Casper properly, but like, I use Jamie, I use Dan, I use Stephanie. The way that, I'll actually include Jamie quickly, actually, because Jamie's interesting, because Jamie is someone I worked with a very long time, very intensely. And we were like, we're Daft Punk. We're sequencers. Like my scripts are very detailed. I often include things like panel grids. I occasionally break to Marvel method and list out ideas, and then we have conversations offline and we build off that. So it's all very hyper anal. I give very specific solutions. Even if we don't do them, I give specifics. So it's that kind of relationship. With Stephanie, it's not like that at all. Like I wrote a grid once for Stephanie, and I came back with these slashy things across the page, that was issue 1 of Die, and I realized, oh no, it ain't gonna happen. No grids here. Stephanie is the sea. You're collaborating with the sea. It's going to do what it wants to do. Therefore, you need to learn to ride and ride and explore with it. And with Stephanie, it's like especially with Die, it's a world building exercise. So you often get a panel which is like 400 words of world building and different ways you could do stuff. And then at the bottom, but too long, didn't read. And then I give the absolute core, because the core line is this is what we need to tell the story. Anything else, you can do what you want. As long as we've got this idea, as in sad robot holding a dog, you know what I mean? As long as we've got that, the story works. The rest is additional. This is flavor for you to use. So that's, in other words, with her, it's like I'm inspiring her, then I will build off her, and it's that the sea. Dan is a classic superhero artist. He is. I write for him like I would normally write most Marvel people in terms of mainly the architectural blueprint, very little love letter. So I give as few panels as I can on a page, and you can always add more panels, and just try to give him really cool shit to draw. Like every issue of Once the Future is kind of like, okay, what new thing can Dan draw which will look awesome, all the way through. And get out of the way. That's the thing. It's like, bare minimum, get out of the way. The only exception with Dan is Dan, of course, I don't think he's ever been to he has no idea what the UK looks like. So there's a lot of reference. So like, there's a bit in issue 1 where they're at the house of the old people's home where Gran lives. It's like no building at all ever seen in England. And it's like, that's fine. There's also weird buildings in England. And it's like, oh, obviously, why would he know? So I sent like street data maps. I sent Google Maps of every bit in Bristol. I take, the whole, I give so much reference because it's a real world setting and we want to make it real, but also, it's the sets for him to go the full on action hero with. And that's how you write for them because it's a different story. But mainly with Dan, it's get out of the way. With Stephanie, you want to, it's baking a cake as well. Here are a load of ingredients and she will be the awesome French chef that she is.
I love that answer. Hopefully that works for you, Mike. We have to let Kieron go. Thank you so much for being gracious with your time. I would love to do this again. We didn't even really get into the X-Men. I have like 50,000 questions for you. But again, go pick up the Power Fantasy. We are only 5 issues deep, so it is very easy to jump on board with that. The trade, am I mistaken that it's out now, or is it?
It's out on when it starts coming out on Wednesday, and then it's out on the 28th, and then it's like the 2 weeks afterwards. Because Diamond comes out 2 weeks later, and the other Lunar shops on Wednesday.
Okay,
so, and it's $10. I will note that's the actual thing. It's dirt cheap.
That Image Volume 1, $10. Yeah, easy to pick up. We're gonna give away a copy next week. Kieron, thank you so much for joining us. If there's anything you want to plug or let people know about, now's your time.
No, I would say look at the Power Fantasy Primer. That includes links to everybody on the team as well. So you can just jump on our socials that way. It's been lovely. Please, I'd love to come back. Drag me back for the next trade or something.
Awesome.
I can say, cool.
Awesome.
See you around, guys.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
All right, that was Kieron Gillen. That was awesome. I love talking to him.
It's so intelligent about what. Damn, that music answer where he gave me the opposite, because it's funny. I remember, and for some listeners, you might be able to go back to, I want to say not this past year, but last year's New York Comic Con, where I asked Ram a similar question. They're both music heavy creators, and he said the same thing about time. You can trick people into feeling time in comics, but because they're doing it at their own pace, you have to try to find some kind of abstraction in order to be able to play music or think about it. And it's interesting that he said they're opposite art forms, because music and comics are so intertwined sometimes. From creators can leverage them a lot. So yeah, that was awesome. He's a brainy guy.
Yeah, I love that shit, man. Just great answers, great thoughts. Really, really intriguing conversation, and hopefully we can do it again really soon. He's man, what a force. I love his energy too. Just so much fun to talk to. Sorry, Mike, that we weren't able to get to your super chat. Mike said, "You've become a must-buy creator for me. Looking forward to the future, especially more creator-owned series from you." Sorry we couldn't get to that, but like I said, hopefully we can have him on again. Talk more about X-Men, talk more about, my God, what a prolific career he's had. And we had to keep our focus. Yeah, what a great guy. And chat seems to be reacting positively to the talk. Michael Nadeau says, "Is it too late to order that trade from an LCS?" So final order cutoff has probably passed on something that's out, this week. But your LCS will probably have copies in shop, right? So you can probably walk in and grab it. $10, super cheap. I don't ever like to promote stuff that I don't like actually like. If I don't co-sign it, I'm not gonna tell you guys to pick it up. The Power Fantasy is fucking awesome. It's heavy, it's heady, it's deep, it's exploring a lot of big topics and big conversations, but it's awesome. Like if you're into that, this book is right up your alley. It's also fun. It's not just characters droning on and pontificating. There's a lot of fun stuff going on too. So definitely worth your time.
Yeah, always a good pickup for Kieron. He's been that way for me since Phonogram. So this is just adding more to his prolific career.
Hell yeah. Jamzilla says, "This is my favorite interview you guys have done. Congratulations on getting Kieron Gillen for an interview. Such a cool guy." Thank you, Jamzilla. Appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad you feel like it's your favorite. Um, I feel like I say this every time we get a big interview, but the quality of guests, like everybody we've had on is great, but the level up of being able to get bigger and bigger names, it really happens because of you guys. It happens because there's a little bit of familiarity that creators have with us now because, they've been seeing us on social. They see people talk about us. They see us at Comic-Con, stuff like that. So a lot of it happens because of you guys. So thank you for showing up.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the support, like people, I feel that's what happened with was it with Jeff? Like it was people were fans of us. Stuff was going circulating around, and then Brian happened to come across us and like listen to the show, being a fan.
Marco's talking about Jeff Johns and Brian Cunningham, the editor of Jeff Johns' books. But yes, I completely agree with that. It's like word of mouth, dude. That shit definitely matters. It absolutely matters that you guys show up for these. It matters that you talk about us. All that stuff is important. And we talked with Kieran about marketing and marketing comics and like how so much of that is the creator's responsibility. And we're living the same life. We are absolutely living that same exact life. So the same way that for Kieran, people like us talking about his book is helpful, and people like you guys being excited and talking about it is helpful. It's helpful for us that you guys talk about us and are excited for what we do. So
keep doing it.
Hell yeah. Hecatron says, "Good interview. He's one of those guys who you just have to set them up and get out of their way. He's so passionate about the power fantasy. It's obvious." Yeah, totally. The Brits are like that.
The Brits.
Yeah.
Al similarly, you kind of just like send him in a direction.
It's like winding up, like one of those wind-up toys. Like
Yeah.
You just wind them up and then let them go. They do their thing. I love it. Scriptured says, "I really wanted to know if he'd ever consider a DC book, but nah, I'd rather he focus on power fantasy. It's so fucking good." Yeah, I really wanted to dive into like why don't we see more of you? Why don't we see more Kieron Gillen on the stands? Like,
Yeah.
but that'll have to wait for our second round.
He did say in back matter, he's been doing movie stuff. He's been doing like video games. He mentioned on right now in the interview. So I'm sure he's like spread to some degree, but I feel like comics are where he needs to come and like expand.
I wish there was more money in it. That's probably the reason. Like if you get down to the brass tacks, if you have the opportunity to write a movie script or write a TV or write a video game, those things are going to pay you more than doing a comic, even if you own it. There's just not enough money in this shit.
Yeah.
James Jones says, "Pals are on their own power fantasy as the pals approach 5K subscribers." Yes, we are on the road to 5K subscribers. If you are listening to this, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. Like the video if you have not done that yet. We really appreciate everybody who supports us in those ways, and every way, quite frankly. The phenomenal AC,
Yeah.
what a great guy. Says, you guys being unapologetic about how you feel keeps me coming back, and Sean's rants will forever have me telling Omar to have you on his streams. Thank you so much. And again, that's promotion, right? Like if you guys go and say, hey, I really like Sean or Tyler on the Evergreen streams, or can we get Marco or Cale on this? Like it keeps our names out there, those bigger streamers that are thinking about us, and then we get the email, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And like, we're never gonna say no.
Yep.
We're not gonna say no. I will always do whatever Omar asks me to do because Omar doesn't have to ask me to do shit. Omar doesn't need me. If anything, I need him.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the reach out. It feels really great.
Flush out the community and continue to be part of the community. I think that's the big thing as well is, we keep integrating, we continue to integrate, and that's fun because then we tap into people who we wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Silhouette says, I wish Al Ewing did more creator-owned and Kieron did a DC book. Yeah, I think we only find them when they're dead, which Silhouette, I don't know if you've read that, but I think it's sick. I think the way that went kind of, I don't want to put words in Al's mouth, but when we talked to him about it, the impression that I got was that like it didn't do as well as he had hoped from a sales standpoint. And so one thing that you'll notice, like if you really pay attention to what creators do and how they move, look at the movement of Kieron Gillen. So Kieron Gillen does Young Avengers, a book about, these, and X-Men as well at that time, a book about these like young, very interesting characters. He had Loki, a god, walking on Earth as like a younger dude at that particular point in time. And so that goes how it goes. And then he jumps and does Wicked and Divine, which totally feels like Young Avengers. So if you are a fan of Young Avengers, you can easily shift gears and read Wicked and Divine and jump and get into that. 10 years later or so, he jumps back into the X-Men pool with Immortal X-Men, a book about superpowered characters who are morally gray in a lot of instances, who need to work together to solve the problems of the world or the world will end. Then he does the Power Fantasy, a book about essentially the same idea. So when you follow up your Big Two stint with something that is totally familiar and similar to what you were doing at the Big Two, the likelihood that people will follow you is high.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much to Atomic Hound with the $9.99. Consider sharing a link to the video with your LCS employees. If you're comfortable doing so, it helps the creator, the pals, and maybe helps your LCS move some books. Yeah, thank you so much. Always get back to the community. Always get back to the place where the sales happen for the creators.
Totally. Absolutely.
And then to what you're saying, Sean, I think also the trajectory that a creator can go on is varied at different touch points. Like for me, I heard of him only through the Wicked and Divine stuff and worked my way backwards, right? So when he was coming on to X-Men, I had that excitement because my familiarity was from a different place. Right? It was from it wasn't from the X-Men world. It wasn't from the Marvel world, the Big Two world. But what it does is it attracts me and bounces me back into different companies, and that only happens with a good creator.
100%, exactly. Thank you, Atomic Hound, for that. Really appreciate it. Jamzilla says, at the rate you guys are going, I wouldn't be surprised if you got Alan Moore for an interview. Well, I'd be a little surprised and really impressed. I'd be impressed too. I'd be shocked. I have no expectations of ever meeting or speaking to Alan Moore, but if I did, I think it'd be great. And like, I love Alan Moore's work. I don't worship him. So it'd be a lot easier to talk to him than some other people whose work I absolutely do worship. And I do have a lot of thoughtful questions, I feel like, for Alan Moore.
Yo, you can't see it here, but I mean, the summoning circles, I've been working on it. Who knows how much? I got some of Tyler's blood like circulating over there. Like, there's a lot of shit that's going on over there. But
is that why Tyler's not here today?
That's right. He doesn't. And you know what? Alan Moore doesn't answer the call. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
You need to work on that, brother. Scripture says, "Is there a creator out there you're dying to interview that you haven't yet? Like, what's y'all's top three? Go ahead, Marco.
Ooh, this was a top. This was a top three.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love Wick Divine, and his music stuff in particular is really interesting. Um, Someone else, Brian K. Vaughan. I'd love to pick his brain about writing, about last pages, like with the construction of that, like building worlds, building universes. I think Frank Miller.
That's very doable.
Yeah, he'd be cool to have on. Interested to hear about his thoughts on the history of comics. And Chris Claremont. I just want to say, hey, dude, your comics rock. I try to say rad.
Yeah, Chris Claremont also very doable, and I think would be really fun. Maybe we should think about that in 2025. For me, it would be my big three are Jonathan Hickman, Rick Remender, and Grant Morrison, and none of those will happen.
Yeah.
Like the most attainable one is Rick Remender, and that is not fucking happening. That man will not do like if you look at the interviews that he has done, he clearly doesn't want to waste his time doing things that won't have huge penetration. So, because he doesn't like to do interviews, so it's just not realistic. Like I tried, and he just like he
He's
kind of, you know,
politely said no.
he didn't even say no. He just said, reach out, and obviously I did, and I never got a response, and I'm
Yeah.
never gonna get a response. So, Tyler is in the chat. What's up, Tyler? He says, I lived, bitch. Yeah, Tyler, we'll let him tell his story. Needless to say, Tyler's okay. He'll be back next week. But it was weird to do one of these without Tyler for sure. Even for me, it was weird.
Yeah. And like he says, he's gonna be part of that replay crew.
Yeah, hell yeah. Shu
No,
Patel says, go ahead.
sorry, Pete Collins said, "What? No Liefeld love? Hey man, tell him to unblock us."
I would interview Rob Liefeld. We did an interview with him many years ago at a Comic-Con.
And he was a cool dude.
Yeah, he was fine. Shu Patel says Alan Moore did an interview recently for his book The Great When. Yeah. Where did he do it at though? How many subscribers did that channel have though? That's the problem. And like subscribers realistically as a YouTuber, they only mean something as far as like social proof. Not every subscriber is an active one. Obviously, not every subscriber listens to everything we do. We have subscribers who don't listen to anything we do. But that number tells other people, hey, these guys are worth tuning into. They're worth showing up for because people listen to them. So our book will have traction. People like Kieron Gillen, people like Mark Wade, certain others, Kelly Thompson. These are just people I think about. Like they do shows that don't have a lot of views or subscribers. They have a scattershot approach. People like Scott Snyder, people like obviously Hickman. Remember, they more want to do shows where like they know that they're reaching a lot of people.
Tiny In, for example,
Yeah.
had to send stats over.
Yeah, we literally had to send our statistics over to get James Tynell on this show. Which is crazy to me because we're fans trying to promote your books to our audience. And it's like, yeah, but how many people do you have listening? We don't give a fuck that you're fans. How many people do you have? All right.
Yo,
I get it.
I just googled that Alan Moore conversation. 7K views 3 months ago. 72 subscribers.
What?
Don't know.
That's crazy, dude.
Help us out.
All right.
Someone help.
Who's his manager? Who's his handler? How do we reach out?
What do we do?
What do we do? That's the only thing we could ever have over over like Near Mint or Sal and the Comic Pop group. Like the only thing we could ever have over them is like, well, you guys have 200,000 subscribers. You guys have all this. We got Alan Moore.
Solo.
Yep. That's the only thing we could have to pump out there. Libro Paradiso, yes, it is too soon, and that will never happen. Sorry about that. James asks, what about McFarlane or Silvestri? Dude, please. I would love to interview Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Tyler says Eric Larson. That'd be a good get.
I have never read. Well, I read one Savage Dragon. I read one Savage Dragon, and so I don't care about it. But I know that there would be a lot of people who'd be into it, and maybe that could be a more Tyler-focused interview.
Yeah.
Hecatron says no Dennis Camp, dude. I have written Dennis Camp a message on Twitter. I believe I messaged him on Instagram. We've sent an email to Dennis Camp, multiple emails. Dennis Camp is my number one with a bullet in terms of like the new crew. Like, you guys know how much I love Ultimates. He won't respond. I see him on other channels that are not as big as ours. We need him here.
Tyler, yes, Pet Spencer. He's being annoying. He's being super needy right now. He's clawing at me from that. You don't see it because I don't react, but he'd be tapping my, Stop.
72 subs, a channel called Rick Cleffel.
Yeah,
that's where Alan Moore was at. That's nuts.
Rick Cleffel 4027.
Libro, we tried Remender. We tried
did.
it. We tried it. I mean, I'd try again, but Brain Tissue Paper says it's quality over quantity, right? Like, I feel personally like we might not have the most viewers, but we have some great viewers. The amount, like, yeah, I deal with some assholes in the comments section of our videos, but like, largely those aren't people that are tapped into us,
right?
Largely those are just random fucks.
And I think also, I feel like, I don't know, I personally think our interviews extract a lot from, like, a lot of value from a creative standpoint for creators. It's the how did you get started? Oh, what's your favorite comic? Who's your favorite superhero? Like, I don't give a shit. How'd you make this? What'd you do with it? What do you think about? Like, that's interesting, because then I feel like you get an insight into what it is that they're trying to say about either the world, their art, or something that they feel.
Yeah, most people, like, if you're a fan of Kieron Gillen, for example, there's a chance that you've heard an interview with him already. And I don't really want to ask him questions that other people have asked him. I don't think it's a toxic trait, but one thing I do a lot of times is I'll go and listen to other interviews with creators that have done other channels, and like, my thing is, I want the Comics Pals interview with that creator to be the best one.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to hear what have they been asked a million times? What did it look like they bristled at when they were asked it? When did their eyes roll? Like, what bullshit questions do they want to avoid? And try to hit them with something a little deeper.
There was one I remember for when we had Ram on, and somebody I was doing research for it. I saw somebody else's podcast to do, and it's like, so what's your, like, full name? And dude, you see it deflate. It's like Ram, Ram's a whatever. He's like, so yeah, can you say it? I'm like, bro, what?
First of all, you could look that up.
I know.
I've seen Ram's full name, but you could look it up.
Yeah.
And second of all, what difference is it going to make to you? Like, that's so silly. James says Gail Simone would be another good one. I have been reaching out to Gail Simone for years. We have an interview with Gail Simone on the channel from many years ago at New York Comic Con, but as much as she has tweeted about us in the past, can't get her on the show. Don't know why.
Hi, Gail.
Yeah, we would love it. Uncaged says, could we do Kelly Sue? Gosh, I've never even seen a Kelly Sue DeConnick interview, but I'm not that tapped into her, to be honest. Like, I didn't read Bitch Planet.
Just
notably,
like trade.
What else? What are her other big indie books?
She did. Oh, indie books? I don't remember. She did like a run on Aquaman a couple years back.
Yeah, Wonder Woman Historia.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know she's got FML out now. I would love to interview her for sure.
Oh yeah, that's right. I've heard good things.
Yeah, I didn't care for the first issue, but I need to reread it. Mr. Funiverse says, let's get Zeb Wells on the show where we're talking about the greats. I would fucking love to glaze Zeb Wells and let him know just how much I loved his run on Spider-Man and how I was the only YouTuber defending it.
The only YouTuber.
Yeah. The only one.
The only one. Everyone else fighting for. This isn't it. Can't do it. No. Oh, near. Yeah, Jeff Lemire. He's high on my list. Him and Matt Kint. Uh, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff would be cool. Ooh.
Lemire said yes when we
He
spoke to him.
he said yes. I emailed him, but something came up.
Okay.
There's some stuff there.
Cool. So I would say that it's probably fair to say you could expect to see him on the channel this year. If,
Depending on whatever the situation. Yeah.
yeah. Chop Harder, Alchemist, what's up, dude? Says, what about artists? I would love to see Dan Mora, Pepe Larraz, Jimenez, etc. Colorists like Marta Gracia, letterers, and more. I would love to learn more about processes and how the cake is baked. That's a great point. When it comes to the Spanish creators and the ones who are from overseas, sometimes there is a language barrier where they might not be comfortable doing a long form interview like what we do on this channel. But I definitely think we could do better about reaching out to artists. Long form interviews with artists can be difficult just because it's like, damn, I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I don't know how to get the most out of those conversations because art isn't the way my mind leans. I'm a writer in my personal life. Like, writing is what I live by. So I understand how to speak to somebody who thinks that way. Artists, less so.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that I asked at Comic-Con this past year, Gavin. I'm like, hey, like, what should we be doing more of? How should we be speaking about certain things? And it realistically, it kind of just turned into like a little lesson on here's the construction of a page, and I think it was helpful in that, but it's hard to similarly because not necessarily wired in that way. There's an appreciation, there's an additional language that needs to be built about it, but or like additional language that needs to be spoken to like really tap it and extract value. That becomes a little difficult. So yeah, I would want to do more, but it just depends.
Yeah. Phenomenal AC says, largely those just random fucks is my favorite quote from today. God bless you, Sean. Dude, I'm here for it, man. I am here for it.
Yo, Matt Fisher with $1.99 each, shouting out the top people. We got Jeff Lemire, Dan Jurgens, Carl Kessel, and of course Hulk Hogan.
Wow, brother. Thank you for the support. I would interview Hulk Hogan, but I wouldn't be able to not ask him questions about him being racist. And like, I've always wanted to know, and this is deep lore, so if this doesn't make any sense to you, like, I'm sorry, but Hulk Hogan's best friend for a time was a guy named Bubba the Love Sponge. Bubba the Love Sponge is a radio personality, and he lives in Tampa, where Hogan lives and has resided for many years, and they were very close. And so Bubba the Love Sponge had a very attractive wife. Bubba the Love Sponge was not himself an attractive man, and so I guess his like self-deprecating perspective led him to offer her sexually to other individuals. That is how Hulk Hogan got caught up with the racist stuff in the first place, because Hulk Hogan had sex with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife. This was all okay, it was planned. Bubba agreed to it. This was after Hogan was going through his divorce with his wife. And so they were kind of like, hey, we see you having a tough time. Why don't we solve that for you? Why don't we make you feel a little bit better by you having sex with my wife? And he didn't know that Bubba the Love Sponge records everything in his house. So the sexual escapade that they had was on film. It was recorded. And that is how we got the classic line of Hulk Hogan saying, oh, I feel like a fat pig. I ate too much sashimi, brother. Like, how do you say that in bed with a beautiful woman you just bedded? I feel like a fat pig. So I would have to ask Hogan, like, how do you get to the point where you are willing to have sex with someone else's wife? And how do you get to the point where in that very same bed, you talk about how you're a racist? He literally did that in bed with this woman.
Wait.
Because his daughter, this is like such a long, winding story. I know too many things. I'm very much, I love gossip. So his daughter was trying to get her music career going at the time, and his daughter Brooke Hogan. And so she had like managers and shit like that. And Hogan got a phone call, and he said, "Oh, that's Brooke's manager. You know, he's a Blizzak guy. Hulk Hogan talks in Carney speak. And so he's like, that's a Blizzak guy. And you know, I don't have a problem with N words, but if you're gonna be with one, it should be a rich one, like a basketball player or something like that. You know, I'm a racist, and look, we're all a little bit racist. Like that's just how it is. Yeah, I'm a little bit racist. This is audio that anybody can hear if it's still available on the internet, but I've personally heard it, so I'm not making anything up. That's Hulk Hogan. So yes, I would interview him, but I would have to discuss those things.
I was trying to, my mind was trying to figure out, okay, how does having sex with this guy's wife go to racism? I was trying to bridge that gap, and then, but we got there. Holy shit!
Yeah. I love that shit, dude.
That's
I love it.
Trip.
And I obviously I don't love the fact that he's like that. I just love that I know that. Like, like what a fucking awful person. You know what I'm saying? Don't even get me started on his son. That's a whole other can of worms. Gage says, "Let me come on for the artist interviews. I'll ask him a shit ton." Unfortunately, that's not how it works, bro. It's not how it works. You got to put the time in, man. We've been putting the time in. You gotta put the time in. Develop those interview skills.
That's
you know?
bugged out.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Atomic Cal, the pals Hulk Hogan deep dive incoming. Yeah.
I would love to be able to do deep dives about pop culture.
Wild, dude.
I would love it, dude. I would. The amount of things I know about just from watching like The View. Please. Lil Hootie says, I never thought about people that aren't wrestling fans don't know that story. Remember it being a big thing at the time. Yeah, it was a huge deal. And a lot of non-wrestling fans probably know nothing about that. So
I only know of it because of you guys. You guys have discussed this in the past, but only with the sashimi part. Too much sashimi, brother.
Hell yeah. Scripture says it'd be so fucking cool for a full creative team to try and to watch them vibe out. It'd probably be too many people for one call though. Well, we had Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, so it wasn't the whole creative team, but it was those two, and that was great. We had, going back a ways, but we had Ted Brandt and Rose Stein.
Oh, that's right.
From Crowded, and that was just the artist, but the artist and the colorist. But they were a lot of fun too. So yeah, that's something I would love to do. Creative teams now, I feel like geographically they're so much more spread out than they've ever been, that like the hours get really weird. Mm-hmm. With Ghost Machine, it's like impossible. The hours just get really weird.
Yeah, we've tried, and they're like, oh, this person has this, because it's like UK plus Eastern, but also West Coast, and there's so many involved. That's like 3 or 4 time zones.
Exactly.
Silhouette says, have y'all ever had Daniel Warren Johnson on? Not on the show. We have interviewed him twice now, or once directly, and then he part of a round table, but would be an awesome get. That's another one that I've asked for, I've gone for. We'll try it again.
He's a hard one. He works a lot. He is very focused on being present for his family as well. So he's a tough cookie. But another one of those like big gets, like for me, I would say probably top 10 creator. Yeah. I would love to have on the show.
100%.
For sure. Mike Hank says, oh my God. You think he does the ear gesture while doing it with his partner, just does WWE emotes. I could see that. He hulks up like he's about to tap out, he's about to be done, right, in that partnership. And then he hulks up, and then he gets to the finish line, he drops the leg, pins him, metaphorically, literally, done deal, pal.
I don't know what just was said. Does the ear gesture?
It's this. Come on now. It's this. The Hulk Hogan, like.
Oh.
You know that.
Is that him?
Yes.
I just thought that's like a thing that people do.
God damn, bro. Come on, Marco. You don't know what Hulk Hogan does?
I don't, apparently.
Wow. Wow.
You said the Hulk out?
The Hulk out is just when he like hulks up. He powers up like that. You got to see it. Like he's getting punched in the head, but he's no selling it, which means he's not reacting. And he goes like, he gets punched, right? He goes like, and then he just beats the fuck out of whoever his opponent is, and he wins. It's crazy.
Oh my God. Let me see. Okay, I got Hulk's up against The Rock at WrestleMania X8.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I see it. Oh my God, he's just. And The Rock's in shock. He's like, what?
Yeah, like I can't believe that this 56-year-old man is somehow going to beat him. No, The Rock wins that. Aaron Ruiz with a 5 spot. Hulk Hogan deep dive before Heroes in Crisis book club. That doesn't work for me, brother. Dude, I would rather do a deep dive on Hulk Hogan. I'd rather do a deep dive on Vince McMahon than do a Heroes in Crisis book club.
Hot damn.
That's what I would rather do.
His hulking out is like when Popeye eats spinach. Okay, all right.
It's not, yeah. It's a similar concept. If you guys have any more questions or comments for us, please feel free to share them. We only planned to interview Kieron today, so there's not like a whole show planned out otherwise. I do want to read off, of course, our patrons. Patreon.com/TheComicsPals is the best way to support us. If you enjoyed this interview, if you enjoyed the banter today, anything like that, Patreon is a great way to show your love. And I appreciate all of our patrons. What I want to do is I really want to celebrate the people who've been with us, like those milestones. Like, shout out to our Pals vs. Legends, Thunderstruck Rebecca Alejandro, who's been with us since day one. The Hound of Justice, Atomic Hound, who's like coming up on 2 years now.
Damn.
Of being in the community, being a patron. Starcross Catherine Stars, day one. The Red Spiral Storm's been with us for a while. Adam and Bernie, the Best Boy. The Spear of Judgment, Jace Jumble, and Matthew Malice Price. And I also want to thank the Night Stalker Harris Zaginski, who's been with us day one. Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, day fucking one. Kefis the Incorruptible, day one. Momentum Mike Elliott, day one. Dan the Truth Trudeau, like 2 years. Marley Manastorm, Slow Flow Dameron, Christian Uncaged, Always Laughing, The Spear of Justice, Izzy Spears, The Great Destroyer, Hyper Viper 89, day one. Robert Runback Cashaback, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, James Just Jamming Jones, Paul Powerhouse Smith, Andrew the Galaxian Smith, Neon Knight the Cosmic Avenger, Matthew the Shade Cosmo, BJ Kicks, The Living Blade Boss Deer, The Grand Alchemist, Chop Harder Alchemist, John Barrier B, Doomsday David Melendez Doria, Steve Swarm Canaris, Brian Rage, Redmond, Panda v Panda, Ted Wong, Mad Max, The Absolute Overthinker, Blur, Jekyll Jose, Kobe the Crafter, Scriptured, The Wardens of the Word, Hecatron, your origin is impending. You're next up. We don't like to do origins on episodes where we have guests. Amin the Almighty Perez, Jalen the Sanguine Sorcerer, Houston Murphy, and Jasper Eddy.
Damn.
Electrics as well. We are rolling right now with the patrons, and as many as we can get, the better things get for us. So thank you to all of you.
Whoa. What is this?
Happened?
Entertain me with the $5. Thank you so much. Says Marco not knowing Hogan gestures drops your cool factor from 9.5 to 9.5 from 10. Sean, always keep it real. I'm not a nerd, okay?
What? You're the biggest fucking nerd out of all of us.
What was it? Last week I did I did spreadsheets for fun to like relax over the weekend.
Right. Yeah, that's bugged out. I don't ever look at math when I want to chill.
I exclusively look at math when I want to chill. Or I pick up some random comics.
Cult of the Lamb.
So this was Alex Packnadell, Troy Little, Oni Press. This, I was randomly picking books up at Forbidden Planet the other day. And I'm like, oh, this is cutesy. Alex Packnadell, he's never been a writer that has hit me. He's never been a writer that I feel like, I see what he's doing. I'm not really getting it all the time. So I'm like, one more shot. This is new. First 2 issues are out. Let me pick this up. And it is about a cutesy little deer that or lamb rather, that is murdered. Straight up, another cult kills this thing, sacrifices. We see it all, and then is reborn to exact revenge by another cult of another god who wants to take over the world. And so now this lamb has to, who isn't gendered, by the way, they never mention, which is interesting, is on a quest to accumulate and build their own cult in order to then wage war against this other impending force.
Marco, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Why are you talking about this now instead of on Pal's previews, which we have to record right after this?
I've been reading more. I wanted to talk about more stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Very good. The chat is calling you out, though.
Yo, for spreadsheets, come on. Who does like budgeting? Budgeting for the future.
You're insane.
Gotta get that 401k. Gotta get that. What is it? Gotta bring down some credit card debt.
Oh my goodness. Connor says, "Sorry, I missed this one, guys. Was that football? Hope it was a good one. Looking forward to listening to it back. I think it was great. I think it was an awesome conversation. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it when you do listen back." Mike Hanks says it was based on the hit game Cult of the Lamb. It is very interactive with Twitch chat as well.
That's awesome. I had no idea. I'll have to check this out.
There you go. Good thing you talked about it live then.
Oh yeah.
Tilo says, "By the way, just finished the Valiant event. It's good shit." Dude, I've been wanting to get into Valiant for years, and I just don't. I don't know. Like, I tried the Bloodshot. I think it was Bloodshot, and it was written by Dennis Camp, and it was the first Dennis Camp I read, and I fucking loved it. I thought it was brilliant. Yeah. We read it for the show. But that was it. That was all I tried. It was really good. Not everybody's Dennis Camp, though.
Yeah, that's true. That becomes a hard part, right? Because then you gotta, what else can you do? What else? Like, what other characters are there? You have to like be attached to it, or you get that really good creator.
Yeah. The phenomenal AC says, "Marco saying I'm not a nerd is like Hulk Hogan saying I'm not a racist, brother."
Damn. Yo, that's crazy.
Well, Hogan couldn't possibly say that because he's on the recording saying he is a racist. So that's kind of a problematic thing. Like, I can't forget that you claimed it. Like, it'd be one thing if you didn't claim it, but you claimed it, bro. Brother.
Let's
go
Hecatron
on your side.
Yeah, he's been liking all the stat stuff that I've been putting up, so I appreciate it. You're on the Patreon, so stay tuned for this next one, because am I this week or next week? Forgetting.
You are, I will tell you in just a moment. You are you're next week, yeah.
Yes.
This coming week.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, anyway, I thought I was gonna be ahead of the curve. Well, I have all the data. Now it's just putting it into writing. So Hecatron, stay tuned. And for anybody else who wants to take a look at stats, trends, some what I got some graphs going on, percent differences. Let's get into what that is specifically for, and here's a little teaser for you guys, the growth over the past 6 months between the DCU app, Global Comics, and the Marvel app.
Okay, shit, I might have to check that out.
Just be careful when nobody glaze over, okay? Because it's gonna be a lot of numbers, a lot of things going, and you can see here the trajectory of this is up by 0.77%.
Not a nerd. Not a nerd, ladies and gentlemen.
Confirmed, not a nerd.
Mr. Funiverse says, "Currently reading Jeff Lemire's Descender. Really enjoying it, but I would love to see Jeff Smith on the show. Big part of my childhood comic history."
That'd be a cool get. Have you ever read Bone?
No.
Oh, dude. Damn.
Isn't that a kid's book?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
Graphic, deals with like war and the tragedy of war. Real good stuff. It's an underground comic, but for some reason it got that label as like, hey, here, I'll give you blood and violence and war as a child. I remember opening a page and like people's heads fly off. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I'm 12.
Oh, nice. I like that.
It's real good. Highly recommend. And Funiverse, keep going on Descender, because then you get to Ascender, and that's another just like run of cool stuff.
Uh, let's see. Anybody else reading anything good? Since we're here, we might as well. Anybody reading anything that they want to shout out?
Matt Cosmo said the game, referring to Cult of the Lamb, is Animal Crossings with combat. Worth checking out. Hell yeah, dude. That's a sell for me.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Mr. Funiverse. I'm not disrespecting it. I'm not disrespecting Bone. I just don't know about it. So there's no. I'm not gonna disrespect something I don't know. I've never read it. I thought it was a kid's book. I literally did.
Oh, Steve Matthews, that's a good perspective. If you like Kaya, you'll like Bone.
Sick. And I do love me some Kaya. Tom Account says, Sean, you need to get Absolute Superman by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Of course, talking about the absolute edition of their run.
Right.
They don't have an absolute book coming out. I would love to get it. I've got like I made the decision not to buy Superior Spider-Man in Omnibus because why? You know, it's like $75 that I could spend on something else that I really want to read that I'm more familiar with already or whatever. So I made the decision not to pick it up in that format. I don't know what my next omnibus buy is going to be. I don't know what it's going to be. I would love to read that though.
You got the phenomenal AC saying, I'm reading the prelude to Onslaught Omnibus. Hell yeah,
nuts.
dude. That's it. That's it. Get that one. Get that one, Sean.
That I will disrespect without having read it. I'll disrespect that Onslaught all day.
Yo, it's not bad, bro. It's not bad. Give it a shot.
It's fucking bad. Didn't you destroy it?
Destroy it? What do you mean?
Didn't you like rip it up and make some other shit out of the pages?
No, I have some other books that I've been doing that with.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually did the New 52 Justice League Dark. I've been taking and doing some stuff with.
Okay.
Yeah, done that in a little bit. I need to get back on that. I have this little tool that I got so I can do like better measurements and better cuts.
Wow, dude, that looks like some shit Pete Collins would have or Gavin Gindry would have.
I'm trying,
That's
man.
crazy.
I'm trying to make more art.
Not a nerd. Let's see. Mike Hank says, shout out to Book of Slaughter in the Something is Killing the Children universe. You know, I bought a majority of the issues of Book of Slaughter or House of Slaughter, whatever it's called. And I haven't read a single one because I wasn't caught up with Something is Killing the Children, and I didn't know where I could start with the spin-off book. So I at some point I decided, okay, I'm not even caught up on Something is Killing the Children. I'm not going to keep buying the spin-off book that I haven't read an issue of. So I had to drop it. Matt/Cosmo says, I'm in the middle of Daredevil Born Again as my first Daredevil anything.
Wow.
And it feels like my third eye is opening.
Hell yeah.
That's what's up, dude. You got a lot of good stuff coming your way if you decide to stick with Daredevil. A lot of great Daredevil comics out there. Shu Patel says, I want to shout out The Hunger in the Dusk. It's coming back after a bit of a hiatus in March, so please check it out if you like the fantasy genre and cool world building. Patel, I fucking love The Hunger in the Dusk. As somebody who wasted a decade plus of his life playing World of Warcraft, A Hunger in the Dusk feels like it's a book right up my alley. It's like, what if the characters in World of Warcraft were allowed to be horny?
Hell yeah. Well, excuse me?
That's what it is.
Sorry?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Nice. I think we read
G.
the
Willow Wilson.
first issue we read, I think.
It's fire.
Yeah. I want to get back on that one.
Real good. Blur Jose with the $4.99. I'll shout out Usagi Yojimbo all day long.
Damn.
A man after the heart of Cale.
That's right. I've seen some of that art. That's so good. What's Dave Sims' big book? Cerebus. I've been hearing. I want to try to get on.
And yeah, that's something I'll probably never read in my life, and I think I'm okay with it. I hear it just gets weird.
Yeah, I heard there's like a certain part. Like there's a part. The first whatever volumes issues are like incredible, and then it takes like a left turn.
Yeah. Flaming Jellybean says, after hearing so many good things from you guys, I finally tracked down the first trade of the current Birds of Prey, and holy shit, you guys were right. It's so good. Can't wait to get to Gavin's stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, Gavin has a really strong arc. But I think the whole book is great. I kind of feel like I feel like it lost a little bit of heat in the All In era. Like it's not quite as strong as it was before, but I still think it's good. Still think it's good.
Bone.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Dan says for Bone. Oop, it just moved. For Bone, it's in all ages. It's in all ages. Kids read it like crazy, but so can an adult. It created the graphic novel market. Yeah, I feel like that's how one of the other touch points for me was Bone. And it's been years. I haven't read it since I was a kid, Dan. So I just remember the violence of it. I was being a little hyperbolic that it opened on beheadings, but I remember for me, surprise at how much was permissible.
Might have to give that a go. Maybe it'll come up on the book club or something. Give me a reason to check it out.
Oh,
What else? I want to read everybody's comments here because you guys are really chatting it up about what you're reading right now.
Aaron Ruiz, exceptional X-Men, everyone. I'm telling you guys, Eva Ewing is going to be the breakout star. It's been fun. It's been real good.
It's strong. I've enjoyed every issue. Definitely.
Lo Hootie started the manga Vagabond, and I'm loving it so far. Nice. Vagabond, I don't know that one.
James says, my goal is collecting the old Mirage TMNT run and then Peter Laird's solo run on TMNT. Yeah, those collections, those Mirage collections are really gorgeous. And I really, really want to read more TMNT. I really want to go back and dig through the crates. I love this shit. Atomic Hound asks a very relevant question, which is the book club this Tuesday? Yes. Yes, it is. The Superior Spider-Man book club is this Tuesday. Thank you for that. I neglected to plug it. 6 p.m. Eastern is when we're going to be doing that. I have a lot of reading to do to finish up in preparation, and hopefully you guys will join us. Yeah. This is the moment. Like, I have never read this. I hated the concept. I wanted nothing to do with it. I skipped it entirely. I stopped reading Spider-Man for like 2 years to get away from this shit. And here I am.
All these years later.
Yeah. Forced.
Mr. Funniverse says, I'd love to see Bone on the book club. Great excuse for me to reread it again. And I'll definitely be checking out Ascender. The art is so great. And if you guys can think of a category for that, we tend to break these out as categories. And for anybody tuning in on Tuesday, you'll get a sense of what that looks like for the next round. But yeah, I just don't know how to pin that down, Not necessarily pin it down, but find a way for it to enter the consideration. And Dan says, I just reread Cave Carson Has a Cybernetic Eye. So good. If I'm not mistaken, I was oming on that. It's my favorite DC Young Animal book, even overweighs Doom Patrol. I agree with you. That's a lot of fun.
Style So Serious says Defiant has been good by Stranger Comics. I've never heard of Defiant. I have vaguely heard of Stranger Comics. So, Jamzilla says Good Boy by Garrett Gunn is like John Wick, but if the dog was getting revenge for the human. Hell yeah. That sounds great.
Matt Cosmo says, how many issues of Superior? I really want to tune in for my first live book club. It's a bit of a read. It's 33 issues. Basically, we're doing that first collection, that first omnibus.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
James Jones says, Sean, get the upcoming Reginald Hudlin Black Panther omnibus. Ooh. I don't know, bro. I don't know. That was was his run where Storm and Black Panther got married? Because I read a little bit of that, and I remember not being in love with it. Did Reginald Hudlin write Doom War? I was so hyped for that, and it was so bad.
Really?
Yeah. Hecatron says Doom and Rocket was fun. I forgot to buy that. My LCS problems led me to missing some books, and that is one of the books I missed. Very annoying. Yeah. A lot of good recommendations from you guys. Lots of great comments. I'm loving it. But I think we're gonna call it. We're gonna be live with you guys again On Tuesday for the book club, 6 p.m. Eastern, Superior Spider-Man should be a great time. I have yet to say whether I like it or not. I am
retaining that information.
Yeah, I'm enough issues in to be able to give you an answer.
Uh-oh.
But I will hold that for Tuesday. So I hope to see you guys there. Hopefully you guys are able to show up. It's gonna be a good time. That I can assure you of. So we will be doing that. And yeah, make sure you tune in on Monday. At some point Monday, provided that Tyler is in tip-top shape, we will be able to drop Pals previews as well. I want to see an issue of Pals previews get to 1,000. That we haven't been able to do yet. So let's get that number up. And if you don't watch it, if you're with us now and you don't watch it, I really, really want to know why. I really want to know why. I want everybody to see it. I think we're doing cool stuff over there. It's what a lot of you have asked us for, something where we're talking about comics at length, but not about the books on Pals Pulls. So we're giving you a different slice of our what comics we engage with. So please do tell us your thoughts on that. Otherwise, we will see you on Tuesday. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.